So why is it that Dawn of X fans are so protective of that line? It's interesting. It's kind of like Poison Ivy stands, and I'm sure there's others, but it's like those. If you go online, you talk about Dawn of X, you say something negative, you'll get away with it for a while, but eventually this legion of people comes in to start throwing punches. Why is that? And does it make any sense? And what how do I feel about Dawn of X? Where do I think that thing is at? Um, well, let's talk about it. Hey everybody, this is Perch. I want to say off the offset that in many ways, people ask for my opinion all the time. What do you think of this title? Do you like this? What do you think personally? What do you think about this stuff? And the answer is, I mean, I'll give you my answer, but in many ways, it's irrelevant. It's your dollar, it's your cash. I'll tell you what I think, but I always cringe every now and then. Somebody will say something like, "Hey, I heard that you like something, and I decided to check it out. I feel good." And then I hear somebody say, "Hey, I heard that you dislike something, and so I pulled it from my box." And I'm like, "Ooh, whoa, whoa, whoa! Don't do that. Like, you make up your own mind. I don't, I don't know. I want you to make up your own mind. I've got very specific tastes in lots of different areas, and your mileage may vary. So I try and give you information, but always make up your own mind. I think this audience is sophisticated, smart enough to do that. Except for that guy who's already downvoted the video. You're a jackass. Anyway, I get the click either way, buddy. Anyway, I'm joking. I'm joking. I mention this stuff because it's funny, honestly. So, Dawn of X. So, first off, I think that the biggest reason why I think you see some people get overprotective online, and definitely there's some nuts. Like you say something, you get some people who get really feisty and really angry. And I think there's two main reasons for that. Number one is, at Marvel, it's been a long time since, people who like the X-Men had something to feel good about. The X-Men has been kind of languishing in no man's land for a long time of being this really really great band of titles, and then it just kind of went sideways for a long time. Nothing really major going on. Kind of jobbed out to the Inhumans. Just not a great place for them to be. So the fact that now there's some attention, there's some branding, there's some cohesion, we've got some effort in that direction. People are like, okay, my team's playing good. Now I'm ready to come and fight. And so when somebody comes in and they say, hey, I think it sucks, then people are more in the mind to kind of put up their dukes and have a good fight over it. It's kind of human nature. You have a long drought, and you give somebody some hope and a little bit of water, and they want to protect that. That's reasonable. The other is that Dawn of X and Marvel in general has formulated this kind of very interesting creator fan dynamic where the creators kind of wear um, any criticism against us is a blow against is bigotry, kind of chip on their shoulder. And they pull this card out quite frequently. If a creator is like, I thought this title sucks, then they'll throw out the bigotry card like almost immediately. And then a lot of the fans who kind of get off on that stuff, they start going at it harder, and it just creates this giant cluster. Now, the thing I wish everybody involved, but mostly the publishers and the creators, because they're the ones who are trying to make money out of all this, I wish you guys would understand that whole cluster does not equal sales. Like, look at all the times where people got really been out of shape about something, and we get into this little war about, are the fans toxic fans, etc. None of that equals higher sales. In fact, it often the opposite. The conflict is not it's not the comic people want to read. It's they want to read a comic. They don't want to read about this bullshit, frankly. And so I just wish people would chill. But Marvel, it does this a lot. So people are like, I don't like this, and that Children of the Atom comic by Vidi Ayala, and then Teeny Howard has Excalibur. There's just been a lot of kind of like, I think these suck, and then it's like, well, you hate women, and it's like, no, we don't. You are awful, and it just skyrockets into nonsense. So if you talk about Dawn of X, it's almost like from a fan perspective, that property is becoming extremely polarized and semi-toxic. That if you come in and say, I didn't like this comic, And let's say you're buying all the Dawn of X titles, and this one issue of Marauders just didn't do it for you for whatever reason. First off, this is nothing new under the sun. During Claremont's run, which I think is a legendary run, um, there would be off issues. There'd be like this comic kind of sucked. I thought the Nanny and Orphan Maker bit that Claremont did was always, I mean, it wasn't for me. I'll just put it that way. It was not for me. I always thought those are kind of hacky and cheesy in how they were done. And so nothing is perfect. So if you just come into the title and you're buying everything, you're like, I don't really like what's going on with Marauders here, or maybe, I'm taking Marvel up on what they say. I'm buying these 4 Dawn of X titles, but not these 2. These 2 don't work for me, which is what Marvel and the creators and Hickman and everybody says that you should be able to do. They say on one hand, you don't have to buy every Dawn of X title, just buy the ones you enjoy. But when people say, I'm enjoying these 3, but not these 2, there's a reaction from sometimes the creators themselves. BDIL will quickly block you or other things, maybe. But it becomes this kind of very aggressive. Well, you're one of those toxic fans, and I think more than half the time they're not. It's just somebody saying I don't like the book. But then the attached, the people who aren't necessarily the creators, but the diehards, the people who are kind of currying favor with the creators, maybe they've been retweeted a few times to say how much they loved a book, whatever it happens to be, they just go immediately to war. They think they have to defend the castle, so they go really aggressively at anyone who expresses any dislike about any of this stuff. And all that does is it just makes the whole thing gross, to be honest. I mean, none of that helps the story, and that's kind of where we all find ourselves sitting. Now, in terms of Dawn of X itself, I mean, my personal opinion is that they've got too many titles going on. I just think they went to the well too quickly, and there's just too many. And yes, I get the logic; you don't have to buy them all, but at the same time, they want you to buy them all. They market you to buy them all, and when they do things like Ten of Swords, it's not like Fall of the Mutants, where they all 3 titles had that banner on it. But if you read New Mutants and you didn't read X Factor, you weren't posed. This is a chapter by chapter story where it is all tightly connected. So you kind of are telling people they have to buy all the comics. And I think it's too much. And I also think it's kind of watered down the whole premise. The interesting thing is the House of X Powers of 10, I thought were really good, smart, great comics. And I think that you had basically 6 issues and 6 issues. You had 12, and a lot happened in those 12 issues. It did a lot. The Ten of Swords is going to be more than double that. Is it going to have the same kind of massive impact to the X-Men universe? It's hard to imagine how. It's hard to imagine. So it feels like things are being stretched out. And a lot of the comics, I mean, there's for me personally, it feels like tonally we're kind of doing the same things. It feels like every comic we want to spend a little bit of time talking about how there's parties going on in Krakoa, and hey, there's a tiki bar and people drinking, hanging out, mutants having a good time. We've got a lot of enemies in here that are being introduced, but a lot of them are new. We haven't gone to kind of the classic villains. We're introducing a bunch of new threats, but the new threats all feel kind of faceless. They're like, the Russians are up to something, and then these guys over in Brazil are up to something, and it's just none of it feels like a compelling threat just yet. Just kind of like some stuff's going on. The mutants are in this drug trade, and some people are trying to cut into their business, and it's like they need some. There's something missing for me. Now, some of the titles are better than others. I definitely think that there's some that work for me and some that don't work as well, and that's okay. But it's missing some cohesion for me, and that combined with just a ton of comics, a ton of issues in this line, it's just a lot to bite off. So I think that I don't think it's a disaster. I do think that the X-Men universe is in a much better place than it's been in the last, say, 6 years. And I do think there's some interesting things to pay off. But I think that, and maybe, Ten of Swords is where they're going to do it. Hickman needs to lay a few more cards on the table of what's going on, what's Moira up to, is, where is this all going? I got it for the very first time in, I think X-Force. It was either X-Force or Marauder. Yeah, it was X-Force. Where it really hit home that there is no worry about death. The mutants are being super casual about, like, well, we'll just get people resurrected, no problem. They become, it's taken so much, and some people have complained about this earlier, but so much of the danger is missing. And maybe actually that's kind of the overall point that I'm making about, for me, the Dawn of X and all the X-Men storylines is missing danger. They don't have the key villains. They're still kind of faceless enemies coming from every other direction. And the rebirth and kind of this whole cycle is very, it's taken away the feeling like anything is that bad. So we're kind of seeing kind of mutants hanging out, doing things, but where is the big threat? Now, Teeny Coward is trying to pull that together with the other world and Saturine and all that kind of stuff. So there is a threat there, but unfortunately, it feels very. It's, you know, I'm a big X-Men fan. That is my favorite title of all time, just for the record. And it feels very inside baseball to me. I can only imagine how some of the people reading along who don't have that history are feeling about it. It's just a lot of dense stuff to wade through. And so it's like they need to establish that major threat. Now, I think Dawn of X can very quickly get back on the right footing, for me at least, by, you know, coming out of this Ten of Swords with like a massive threat, massive reveal. Maybe we learn that the kind of the original X-Men are all some underground prison somewhere with Moira, and that these are all a bunch of clones running. I mean, there's a lot of ways this could all go that turns it really dangerous, really cool, really quick. But right now, it feels like it's just got it for me. It feels a little bit too much like it's spinning its wheels. That's just my opinion. Again, your mileage may vary, and if you're enjoying these titles, I'm very happy for you. Good for you. I'm glad you are. When I say that, I don't think you know, oh, you dumbass, you're enjoying these titles. You must be really stupid or easy to please. No, I'm not. I don't think any of that. I think it's great if you're enjoying this title. They're clearly putting a lot of work into it. It's better than the X-Men's been in a long time. It's just there's some issues where I'm concerned, and I'm curious how they can turn those around. I'm interested in seeing where this ride goes. I can't say that for everything. So, you know, be that as may. Anyway, I hope that answered some questions, gave that opinion on there. What do you think? How do you feel about Dawn of X? Where it's at? Where it's going? Are you in? Are you out? Where do you feel? And leave a comment below. Like, subscribe, follow me on social media, and thanks for listening.